Hello, good morning. This is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden, and welcome to Shifting Perspectives, the Lightworkers edition. I'm day 2 into the 9th stage, and I woke up this morning and just realized this whole thing is about energy. I mean, I'll get into that, but the soul is energy. I've been trying to figure out on a philosophical scale what the soul is my entire life. It's bothered me from day one trying to figure out what exactly the soul is. It's energy. It's the internal energy system of us, of each and every one of us. So every time we say something like, that's not good for the soul, we're actually saying it's not good for the energy. It's not good for our soul. And we don't know anything about this realm because, well, the last time people got this far, every time we get this far, we try and communicate it, but the 7th perspective occurs and communication goes out the door. You have to literally reinvent a language. And in order to do that, you do require philosophy, psychology. You require psychology. And because only when you have these massively large perspectives on understanding human behavior at this depth do you really understand what is going on. I every time you get to a new perspective, you get to see who is at your perspective. It's amazing. You get there and you're like, you're here too. You're here too. You're here too. That's what it's like every time. You suddenly go, oh my God, there are people here. And I'm really starting to think that there's a lot more of us. They're just don't know how to articulate what I'm saying. And back when I was at the 7th and the 8th perspective, it was like, and that was really something that was hard for me. With the 8th perspective, it was, and it's true. If you can see the perspectives without being told that they're there, if you can understand perspective psychology without studying it, you're at the 8th perspective. And I assumed that people would just talk about it once they got here. And then I realized, well, the words haven't been invented yet. Words are really, truly everything. This one, the 9th, is all about giving. And we use words like selflessness, and that's not it. Wrong word. Wrong word. Selflessness means something entirely different. Selflessness is the opposite of this because it is with self-love. There is very much self-love here. It's not with intent to take, with intent to gain. And there is a fine articulation to defining what it is that happens at this stage. It's like standing. It's when you realize that you are a conduit. That's the 9th stage. When you realize you are a conduit and you have the full ability to just flip switches and direct this way or direct that way. When you can see all the threads and all you have to do is use emotion to shift and pull. And you do that just by focusing on the emotion. It's a whole nother level of emotions. You know, whenever I struggle with explaining something or understanding it, I leave it alone because I always view that, well, if I don't understand it, I need to wait before I talk on it. And I was missing a massive amount of information with sex, which is why I would not talk about sex prior to yesterday. And I was missing a massive amount of understanding on soul. So as I gain understanding, but here I I then open the door and say, okay, now I have the big picture. And that's it. I won't talk about it unless I have the big picture, unless I can feel that it's complete, until every question and every doubt is gone because I see it and I understand it. So for the ninth perspective, it was sex, it was energy, and it was emotions. I have done several master classes now, and every time I get to the emotions, I shut down and I just go, I can't talk about emotions. And now I know why. It's because the other half of emotions is in the ninth perspective, which is why so many of us are so terrible at managing ours, and it's all over the place. So now I am ready to talk on emotions. Finally. Emotions are literally conduits. It's the data that we get from our subconscious mind sending us messages. But it's a two-way. The subconscious mind can hand it to us, and we can then turn around and use emotions to send it out. That's what pay it forward is. We're sending that out. And the more you grow, the more you get to where it is you want to go, the more you realize that you realize exactly how beautiful it was all laid out to begin with. There are a few people I meet and I don't understand them. I can't figure out where they are. And I think you can get to the eighth and the ninth perspective and not be consciously aware of it. I think you can get to the seventh, eighth, and ninth perspective, and you can be misaligned. God help you if you do. Because I can't imagine navigating this part of my life without the ability to articulate it, without the ability to share it with other people and say, this is what I experienced. My own relationship is changing with my perspective of it. Every time we have a fight with our loved one, they get further away from us. We basically break off of the perspective. And we don't have the words to say, I miss you understanding me. And I just want you to understand me again. And we spend our whole lives wandering through life, thinking about our ex, dismissing them, never being able to understand. So we have to fabricate an understanding for ourselves. I remember the day my daughter graduated high school. Her father and I have never gotten along. Never. Maybe the first 6 months of the marriage, and that was it, of the relationship. 6 months in, there was that moment. The masks came down, the ugly came all out, and we both just stared at each other and we thought, what the fuck did I just get into? We never got along after that. We were married for 8 years. And then he became one of those impassive fathers of literally disowning the children, telling them, I'm not your father. And he would yo-yo with them, where he would say that to them and then he would go the other way. And now I can see it was his subconscious mind toggling, trying to process the different realities. He had a lot of misleading belief that had an invasive perspective, and then he had his heart perspective, his soul perspective, his ethical perspective that told him what the truth was. And he couldn't figure it out, and he was trying to cope, so he toggled. And when he toggled, he kept lashing out at the children. That was his third perspective coming in. He was a fifth and a third. And he would toggle between the two perspectives. And my children would pay for it. Eventually, my children got to that point where they said no, because of his inconsistency. They stopped being his children because he was inconsistently telling them that he was not their father. So now none of my children talk to him. And on the 18th birthday of my oldest daughter, I was concerned about the emotional and mental damage it would cause her if her father was not at her graduation. So I offered to go pick up her father and drive him to her graduation. I did that. It was the first time he and I would see each other and actually spend time together. We were in the car, and I was my usual myself, but he'd never seen that side of me. I'd been living in New York City by then. I was all New York at that point. I'd already crossed over. I was myself. I'd done my shadow work. My healing was at its end. And he was just no idea any of this took place. So I picked him up. I was driving him in my car. And he was just mind blown. He's like, "Who are you?" He's like, I have no idea. I said, "I am always been this. This is who I am. This is who I have always been. I just had a lot of other people telling me that I shouldn't be this." And that's it. Really, that's it in a nutshell. It's a lot of work figuring out who you are, because we have so much contamination telling us who we should be. So we're growing up literally malforming ourselves as distorted monsters. It reminds me of the Firbolg from Celtic mythology. When the Tuatha De Danann, Tuatha De Danann, and the children of Danann came to Earth. Now, if you look at the original myth of Irish myth with the children of Danann, it really sounds like an alien invasion. I mean, it really sounds like an alien invasion. It is an alien invasion. So I will tell you the story of Danann. They were the Fae who descended upon Ireland. And at the time, they had the petty kingdoms and they had the Firbolg. So there was man and the monsters. And then the Tuatha stepped down. And when they did, there was a war between man, the Firbolg, and the Tuatha De Danann. It was a time when they lived, man, the Fae, and the Firbolg. The Firbolg were hideous creatures, malformed. I don't remember. The Fae lost the war, and there were 3 sisters who stepped forward and pleaded that they preserve Ireland. And there was one of the sisters, and her name was Er. And Er asked, I'm pulling back from old memory. Erin was her name. And she asked that if they were going to take the land, if they would please call it by her name. And they granted her this request, which is why Ireland is called Ireland, which in its original Old Norse translates from Er or Erin, hence Erin go Bragh. And the Fae and men were separated. and the Fae were put behind the veil. And if there is still magic in this world, it is in Ireland. Ireland fascinates me more than any other country in the world because it's me. It's like someone picked apart every little bit of my soul and put it into the conglomeration that is Ireland. Books, dance, music, poetry, bard arts, oral traditions. They were immune to the Christian invasion. It was astonishing. So the stories that come out of Ireland are preserved from 6,000 years ago, untainted, untouched by imperialization. Thank you, St. Patrick. St. Patrick preserved the Irish culture in the 1100s. Everyone else was burned and destroyed. Everyone else has pieces and fragments, but not Ireland. Instead, when he arrived, he allowed them to keep their culture. And instead, he just gave them the Christian culture with it, and it merged. And it's hilarious because when you read the documents of old Ireland and you see the stories, you'll be talking about the Fae and Danann. You'll be talking about Culcanin and the child that was birthed of 3 triplets, so that the head of child 1 and the body of child 2, which was a girl, and the body of child 3, 2 brothers and a girl all merged together into one person. And you talk about, or you read about the Firbolg and how these monster race was suppressed and taken via chains into slavery with the Tuatha Danann. And then in the middle of it, there is Jesus and Mary, and they contributed to this. And it's like, it's hilarious because they've preserved it and they infused it. So you'll be in the middle of this massive Celtic Irish myth, and then boop, there's Mary in the middle of it. There's Mary sitting next to Erin. And it's extraordinary. And when you tie in Norse mythology and you see the relationship between Norse mythology and Celtic myth and how they also influenced each other, it's extraordinary. And it was that moment that I realized that I firmly believe, based off all the things we see in Ireland, the ancient stones and the standing stones, and the way you read about the Tuatha Dé Danann invasion, it sounds like aliens invaded. Really, it sounds just like that. So when I hear people talking about alien invasions and how aliens built the pyramids, I'm just going, that is Irish myth. That would be the Tuatha Dé Danann. Yep, absolutely. And oh, it's extraordinary. There is so much in Celtic myth. The problem is, which is why I'm not like opening right up and just talking about it, I saw this other extension of it so vividly. And then I read so much about myth, Norse myth, that between the Norse myth, the Celtic myth, and then my own invention, I merged them all. And that's the magic system inside my fantasy novels. And that is so embedded into my brain that if I try talking about Celtic myth now, I don't know where my myth starts and theirs ends. So I'll just do it and let you know, I don't know whose is who. Like the Firbolg, I don't remember if the Tuatha Dé Danann actually took them as captive and enslaved them, or if that's my story. I really don't remember. I have forgotten what I wrote. Not that I forgot what I wrote, I forgot what I invented. I have forgot my own invention. So I don't remember if I read that the Firbolg were taken as slaves and imprisoned by the Tuatha, or if I invented that for my book. And there's other parts of it, like definitely the Scythe. The Scythe is Norse magic. Now that I know is theirs. And when the Fae are put behind the veil, I invented this story, kind of like the Gunagagap. Gunagagap. The Gunagagap translates from Old Norse as the Great Gap. It's when the gap opens up in Norse mythology, and I got to go back and think about this. It was how the world is created. It's where fire met ice. Honestly, I believe it was birthed off of Iceland, when you see volcanoes erupting out of ice storms, which you see a lot in Iceland, volcanoes on ice. So yeah, they would call that Gunagagap. And then the earth flowed from one of these volcanic descriptions of volcanoes on ice. And it would flow from the giant Mimir. That's what it was, Mimir. Mimir was one of the Jotuns. He was a giant. And when he was killed, out poured the Gunagap, the Great Gap. And his head rolled down into hell, Hel. His body was strewn all over, and from his remnants came earth. And at the time of the Great Gap, the Scythe poured from him. Now the Scythe is the energy. Now I believe that the energy comes from the Tuatha Dé Danann, and that when they were put behind the veil, the Scythe didn't entirely go with them. And according to my myth, the Scythe was captured. There was a war between the Aesir and the Vanir. Those are the Norse myth gods, the old Norse myth gods, that would later become Asgardians. They were Aesir and Vanir. And when they warred, I believe they were warring over who gets the Scythe. Now, the Scythe is the power of mortality. It is. The Scythe is very much the answer to all knowledge and mortality. In Norse mythology, Idun, one of the goddesses, has apples that she infuses. No, she doesn't infuse them. That's my book. She has apples that she gives to the gods, and every day they have to eat of these apples to regain their youth. These are the same apples that are metaphorically used in the Bible with the forbidden fruit. It's the apple that's pulled from Old Norse. That's why we think it's an apple, is because of Idun's apples from Norse mythology. So, in my story, Kalan gets her hands on a pouch that forever produces these apples. And she has the power of the Scythe. And the gods find out. Well, the gods need her for something, but man finds out. So Olaf Tryggvason, the man who Christianized Europe in 995 CE, true story, this is his story now, Olaf Tryggvason, who was born a slave and then was able to trace his birthright back to literally being one of the kings of Norway, went back to Norway and then Christianized it in 5 years. He did to Norway in 5 years what the Roman Empire did to all of Europe in 1,000 years. And he did. He crammed 1,000 years of slaughter into 5. Yeah. And he did. The stories I read. It was one of those books I had to like sign out with this massive, you make sure you use this book with gloves. Yes, ma'am, thank you. And it was the saga of Olaf Tryggvason that I borrowed and read. I told you, when I do my research, I go to the source. I go to the source. So I studied the saga of Olaf Tryggvason. And so in my story, he wants immortality. So he seeks out Colin so he can gang her apples, so he can gang immortality. I really need to go back to writing my book. I wrote 2 of them, of my series. And then I couldn't write anymore. I had too much shadow work to do. I had too much mental illness in my way. I needed to focus. But I will definitely be returning to my fantasy novels. I now have the clear head to do it again. And the discipline. The reason why I'm talking to you about Celtic myth, Norse myth, my myth, is because in stories there are a lot of truth. I'm going to turn things over differently. There comes to a point in your healing where you stop searching for yourself and you start being yourself. It's no good looking for yourself if you never stop to be yourself. I have been searching for answers for so long, and education is such a huge part of who I am that I forget to stop and play my piano. I forget to stop and cross stitch. I forget to stop and paint. I'm so busy studying and growing and pushing myself and healing and learning that I forget to stop and do. And every time I do, every time I pick up a book and I sit down and I read the book, I go, wow, I need this. But then I fall back into the habit of learning and education. And then I meditate and I analyze and I do podcasts. But I'm not reading, playing the piano. Oh, I'm dancing. But I did go through periods where I wouldn't dance. And then I would dance again and be like, I need to do this. Are we practicing being? Are we actually going out of our way to be? Pick up your hobbies. Don't just love them and think about them. Do them. I, this week, started digging through my stuff. I'm finally through all of my belongings. I did an inventory this week to see all the things I let go of, all the things that are still in my life. And I went, I wanted my cross stitch. Cross stitch is something I started doing years ago, decades ago. And when I went to pull out all of my thread and all of my books, it was all gone. So I am in the process of tracking that down, trying to figure out where it is. I may have lost it in my storage unit. So it is something I will need to replace. But that draw to go back to who I am and do the things that I am, play piano, dance, sing. I just realized I have my own apartment. I haven't been able to sing in 3 years. Not open my heart out and sing, except for that one night we did karaoke and I just did nothing but play Freddie Mercury all night long, to the point where another Queen song would come on and people would be like, "It's Anna." It's like, that's right. All I did was Queen that night. It's the only place I could connect with other people. So are you really practicing being you? Or are you just consumed constantly by all the research and all the healing? Don't get consumed with healing, so much so that you forget to live. It's really important that you stop your life and you sit down and you celebrate and you do the parts of your identity that you found. Don't just remember them, find them, and go, "Oh, yeah, I remember. I love this." Do it. And it comes back to finding the time. It's the overwhelm. Overwhelm is urgency. And urgency is a thing of the patriarch used to enslave us. Urgency is time abuse. Thank you, Jonathan Swift. Oh, is he the one who did that? I don't think he did. I got to go back and look on it. Who wrote Gulliver's Travels? It wasn't Jonathan Swift. Oh, no, it was. I did remember right. Jonathan Swift. There is my favorite moment in Gulliver's Travels when he's with the Lilliputians. Oh my God. Gulliver's Travels. Wow, what a book. He gets, you know what it was? It was showing you 4 different perspectives. The first perspective he showed you is, what if you were small or what if you were big and everyone else around you was small? The second perspective he shows you is, what if you were small and everyone around you was big? That's the hierarchy. Then he showed you a third perspective. What if you were in a society where everything was scientific and illogical? I did not realize that until just now. I've been trying to figure that out for a long time. I've been trying to figure out Gulliver's Travels for a long time. And the fourth perspective is, what if humans were the animals and animals were the humans? 4 different perspectives that he introduces. And Gulliver reflects on the different perspectives. Jonathan Swift did not have the vocabulary to explain what he was trying to say. He never used the word perspective in the books. He just showed you. Okay, so he lands at this place and we're in Lilliput. Everyone knows the story of Lilliput. He wakes up after the shipwreck and he's got little people all over him and they've tied him down. And then he becomes friends and there's a war between them and he resolves the war and the conflict. They praise him a hero and they move him on. He goes to the next place. And this time he is the small person and he's in a world of giants. And he often reflects on, oh, this is how the Lilliputans viewed me. And then he goes to this sky place where there's a city in the sky. And it's highly advanced science. And despite how advanced and how obsessed their science was, it was illogical and nonsense, which I see now as a reflection of how he viewed science of the 18th, 19th century. There's this moment where the Lilliputans are taking inventory, so they empty his pockets. And the Lilliputans describe this thing that they find that they can only refer to as a god because it was something that he consulted every time he did anything. Anytime he made any choice, he couldn't do anything without first consulting this god of his. This god told him when to get up, when to eat, when to go for a walk, when to have tea, when to go to bed, when to get dressed. This god told him everything. And at the end of that section, you realize they are talking about a pocket watch. I was 15 when I read that, and I went, oh, I don't want that. I got rid of every clock in my life after that. Really? I have 2 clocks. I have this really awesome pocket watch clock. Irony! It is a giant pocket watch. To subconsciously remind me of Gulliver's Travels. I meant it. I have a giant pocket watch clock, and it sits on this gorgeous little pedestal. Like, yeah. And it's not there to tell me the time. It's there to remind me of Gulliver's Travels. Could you hear any of that? I have no idea if you could hear any of that because I just realized the microphone wasn't up there. But that's my pocket watch. And it's not there to tell time. It's there to remind me of Gulliver's Travels and the pocket watch chapter. That you are not to live in a world where you make this your God. And that's it right there. I collected watches for a long time. I tried wearing them, and then I got to that book. And I lost them. It's hilarious because I kept losing them. I lost every watch I've ever owned. I had probably 30 watches. And I got to that moment, literally 2 watches a year. Literally. Like, I always had watches. And then I got to that book, and I just never again. I went, no, I'm not going to be. That was my first real severing myself from obeying time. And when they put you on that 9 to 5 schedule, it's not a god, it's a slave. They literally use time to enslave you in their schedule. How many times writing you up because you're 5 minutes late, watching the clock, getting nervous and anxious over 2 minutes, standing in line, the insanity, standing in line, waiting to punch in. You get there at 8 o'clock. You are on time. You might get there at 7:55, but you've got to wait in line for 15 minutes to punch in. So you're just sitting there waiting in line to punch in, and now you're late. So you come up in the system as you're late to work. And you're sitting here going, I was standing in line waiting to check in. And then they punish you. They write you up because you were waiting in line to clock in to their system. All I see is Charlie Chaplin. This massive machine breaking, shutting down, people dying, and the bell rings and the next shift of people walk in and they just walk on top of the corpses and continue working at the machine. That's the system. And what amazes me is Charlie Chaplin wrote that film. I can never remember the name of it. Modern Times. Why can I never remember that title? Modern Times. He wrote, when did he write Modern Times? 20s. I know that. Oh, 36. 1936. 1936, he wrote Modern Times. And I always thought, like everybody else, that it was a predictor of the future. No, it wasn't. It was a mirror of the time. It was not a predictor of what would be happening if we didn't. Fahrenheit 451 is not about the future. It's here now. We have burned books. We've been burning books since the 1830s. We have firemen who burn books. Some of them were the Ku Klux Klan. We have a long history of burning books. We have the list of banned books. When they realized they couldn't burn them, then they just put them on a list of banning them. I remember when Harry Potter came out, there was a church that went out and bought all these Harry Potter books and then turned around and burned them. And when they ran out of burning the Harry Potter books, they went back to Barnes & Noble, true story. They bought more Harry Potter books, and they went back and they burned those ones. Thank you for boosting sales. J.K. Rowling blesses you. Like, insanity. Fahrenheit 451 is already here. I'm going back and I'm rewatching these old Doctor Who episodes, and there is one very specific one. It is David Tennant, Rose Tyler, very, very end of the Rose Tyler arcs with David Tennant, very end. Well, not that far back, not that far to the end, but to the end enough. And there is this moment where they go into another dimension. And in this other dimension, the tech is so advanced that they're all wearing these little earphones. And these earbuds are identical to the ones that we read about in Fahrenheit 451. And there's one moment where there is an upgrade or an uploading with the tech. So in the middle of this day, everyone freezes while these earbuds mess around with the wiring in the subconscious mind, take over it, shut everybody down, do the upload, add a subliminal message, and then shuts it down again. And people go, oh, it must have had an unusual station. And it was just so true to everything depicted in Fahrenheit 451. And then you look at the society that we're living today and the similarities. It's like all of these intellects are screaming at us to see it. They are screaming at us to see it. Charlie Chaplin was screaming at us in modern times. Look at us. Look at what they're doing. The Matrix came out. V for Vendetta. Those were not predictors of the future. They were showing you the present, trying to tell you, guys, we're in it already. You're not seeing it. So there are so many dystopian films out there trying to show you what's being done to you in the present. And it's not until you get out of your slavery. You have Stockholm Syndrome. It's societal Stockholm Syndrome. It's governmental Stockholm Syndrome. I know what Stockholm Syndrome is, what it feels and what it looks like on the inside. I've been there. I've been trapped in it. Stockholm Syndrome on the inside looks like fear of thinking different because there's no choice. You think. Stockholm Syndrome on the inside looks like just the question, okay, what do I need to do to get through this? That's Stockholm Syndrome. When you are living your life thinking only, what do I have to do to get through this? Every day, with partners, with romantic interests, with your children, with your society, with your job. That's Stockholm Syndrome. That is exactly what it is inside. You don't think it's Stockholm Syndrome because society makes Stockholm Syndrome look like You're fawning over someone you're in love with. Oh, they're not in love with them. They are absolutely convinced that their survival depends on them. So they adore, they excuse. You are in a, I'm going to preserve the person who provides for me mode. That's Stockholm syndrome. It's when you are in this mindset of, I will do anything to preserve the person who ensures my survival, even if that person harms me. My point is surviving. That's Stockholm syndrome. So on the outside, it looks like people are absolutely in love with their abusers. And that's not it. What it really is they are in preserve and save, the provider mode. And if your provider is an employer, a government, a husband, a caregiver, and you have been conditioned to fear them or your survival is at risk, you have Stockholm syndrome. That's it. That is slavery. It's called psychological entrapment. And we're all contaminated with this thinking. Oh, I have to have my job or else. No, you can be self-sustainable. You just don't know how. I do. I teach this shit. It's awesome. Once you learn how to be self-sustainable, no one can enslave you. No one can control you. You don't need a provider. You become your own provider. Self-providing is such a foreign concept to us in our culture that it never occurs to anybody. It occurred to Charlie Chaplin, which is why he did Modern Times. It occurred to the Matrix sisters, which is why they did V for Vendetta and The Matrix. You do not need anyone for your provisions. You can self-sustain. You don't need money to eat. You really don't. There are alternatives. And it's so foreign to most people that they just can't conceive anything different. They don't even think to ask how. How is not at all discussed because they are so starved with this concept of, oh, my provisions, my entire life survival depends on this entity, government, job, employer, husband, that it never occurs to you to question it. That is Stockholm syndrome. Perfect breeding ground for codependency and narcissistic abuse. And you're so trapped in this perspective that you were raised in to think that you don't even realize you're in it. Literally, it's like a fish growing up in a fishbowl has no idea it's in a fishbowl because it's never seeing the ocean. And that's it. I was raised in a fishbowl and it didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right. Something felt off. And honestly, for me, it was just the lack of logic. I felt like I was Alice in Wonderland. I felt like I was Gulliver on that third island, Sky Island, in a society that screamed, oh, science is the answer and science is everything. And yet they could not even cut him an appropriately fitting piece of garb to wear. It's madness. That is the story of Don Quixote. Question the madness. That is the door to Stockholm syndrome. Question the madness. Because when you question the madness, you start to realize you're the sane one. It's the people who don't question the madness. That's the real perspective shift. When you go from realizing how insane the culture is. Think about it, standing in line to punch in at work for 15 minutes, being late because you're in the back of the line at their job, trying to punch into the system they gave you, making you 15 to 20 minutes late for your shift because of their system, and they punish you. Madness. Question it. It's madness because there's something up. That is the clue. That is the clue that something is up. That's the first tip off. And everyone is so busy doing what they told they had to do that no one stops to ask if there's a different way, because they're dangling your survival in your face. Oh, you got to have this job if you want to eat. And then if you don't do what they want at that job, they remind you every fucking day, you're replaceable. You're replaceable. I can get somebody else. You're replaceable. Oh my God. Who tells that to another human being? And it's not until you get out. Same thing with our partners. You get into a fight with your partner. Well, you can just find another place to live. You're replaceable. People are not replaceable. You are a unique identity. There is no one like you. You are worth 8 billion people. Every one of us is worth 8 billion of us. That is how unique and different you are. And you don't know that. It's been buried so deep inside of you, you think you're replaceable because they want you to think you're replaceable so they can control you. Stockholm Syndrome is everywhere. It's in the people who insist that the country is great. It's in the people who insist they have fantastic marriages while they tiptoe around angry husbands. Insanity. And when you read books like Don Quixote or Alice in Wonderland or Gulliver's Travels, when you watch movies like The Matrix, V for Vendetta, or Modern Times, you just get this massive slap in the face at the insanity. And how much insanity can you read about? Can you watch on TV before you realize they're not talking about a future to come? They are trying to tell you you're already in it, and they are dying to show you a different perspective. They are desperate to break through your current perspective that they have used on you to keep you enslaved in this fishbowl so you can figure out you need to get out. My God. And then there's the people the agents who work for the system in loyalty, nothing more. The ones who are most embedded with Stockholm Syndrome will label anyone who's different crazy, conspiracy theorist, damn hippie. They want to completely discredit you and rip you apart because they don't want you to tell anybody what's going on because you are threatening their provider. When you step up and you start questioning the way the government does things, when you stand up and you start questioning the system, become an entrepreneur. Become an entrepreneur and learn just how free you can be. It is the most liberating realization. And it's not hard. You just don't know how. That's the delusion they feed you. Oh, well, being an entrepreneur is hard. No, you know what's hard? Waking up every day at 7 a.m., making sure I am in my car at 6 or 7:30, driving to work, and then standing in line and punching in like a rat, dangling my livelihood in front of me and making me dance to their song to make them the majority of the money while they give me a fraction of what I'm worth. That's hard. And then after all of that, watching another system take the majority of those earnings from you while you can barely put food in your children's mouth, while you are working below paying wage, living wage. Think about it. There's another great insanity. Living wages here, but minimum wages here. Living wage, minimum wage. Madness. That's slavery. That's giving the people just enough money to placate them so they think they're not slaves. And you don't realize it because you have Stockholm Syndrome with your own government, your own society, and the patriarchy. And you step out of that. Once you step out, you see how bad it is. But you got to get out to see how bad it is. And then your mind is blown. Welcome to seventh perspective. And you're just so speechless over the insanity. That's when you realize that you were already living in modern times. The thing is, modern times was written in 1936. We have been doing this shit at least for 100 years. Charlie Chaplin said it when he wrote that movie, and he showed us, look what we're trapped in, people. Look what's happening to us, people. We are doing the same shit now that we were doing in 1929 when the Great Depression happened. We've repeated the last 100 years. Our society is on a loop, and it's just looping through and looping through, and no one's questioning it. In the 1950s, Ayn Rand wrote Anthem and said, look what we're in, people. Now, Ayn Rand knows fucking shit. That woman was raised in communist Russia. She came to America. She got out of that matrix and went, oh, holy shit. That woman had perspective. So she wrote all of her books. She showed the world. She wrote Atlas Shrugged. Not because she was trying to warn you of what was to come, to show you what is here now, what she escaped from. And it's that surrealism. The rat race is not for thinkers. It's not for visionaries. It's not for light workers. It's not for healers. It is for foundationals. And there's nothing wrong with foundationals. Foundationals need that because that's where they are in their perspective growth. But we are not meant to be stunted at stage 4 of our growth. We are meant to go on. But somewhere, that foundational system, that perspective 1 through 4, that society, baby boomers, got a hold of us and just kept us and said, no, this is the way. Bunch of Mandalorians they are. This is the way. And we're all being crammed into the way. And when you get to perspective 5 and you want to go start your own business, but you don't think you can because how will I sustain myself? I teach classes on how to live outside of the system, how to build up everything you need outside of the system. And it's much easier than they make you think it is. And once you realize how much easier, I'll just tell you here right now, because this is it. This is the formula. What you need to do is you need to figure out who you are and what you are. You need to figure out what you love. You need to figure out what is unique about you. You need to figure out your resourcefulness. Your resourcefulness is what you are going to sell. So what are you resourceful with? I know these are really big fucking questions. And this is the problem. They destroyed so much of your identity, you probably can't answer these. This is why I have the Triadic Healings self-care regimen, is to rebuild the identity so you can get these questions. You need to identify your resourcefulness. What is it that you do better than anything else? Not better than everybody else. That's fourth perspective thinking. No, don't compare yourself anymore. Comparing yourself keeps you in slave mind. Stop comparing yourself. It's slave mind. You are an identity. You are an individual. You are unique. You are a snowflake. Truly. And that's not condescending. They turn that shit into it being condescending. You are that unique. You are that important. You are that resourceful. You can do it. They've just made you think you can't, so you need them. They are narcissists. We're all sitting there nitpicking at each other going, oh, my husband was a narcissist. My ex was a narcissist. The system is a narcissist. The whole goddamn system, the government, the matrix is a narcissist. They have turned you into a mindless goldfish in a bowl and you don't know it. So that when you look at movies like Matrix, you think, oh, that's cool. No, you are Leo in the system. And it's so many people have screamed at us to wake up. So you get your resourcefulness. You define your resourcefulness. Once you figure out where you are resourceful, the next thing you want to do is figure out what you want to do with that. Don't think about money yet. That's the last thing you think about. You think about, what do you want to do with that? What do you want to do? What do you love doing more than anything in the world? For me, I love talking about this shit. I love talking about psychology. That is what I love doing. I love talking about philosophy. I love talking about these ideas. So that's what I love to do. That's what I do. I love engaging and connecting with people about my ideas. I love showing people new perspectives. I love taking a person and feeling how hurt they are and then saying, let me show you something. And then shifting their perspective and opening their mind. And I see their pain completely vanish with understanding. Oh my God, do I love doing that? That to me is an adrenaline rush. And I'm just thinking about it. I can feel the happy hormones dumping into my brain right now. What dumps your happy hormones? If you had no one in the world telling you what was right or what was wrong, what would you do? More than anything in the world, let it be outrageous, because outrageous is actually just you being authentic. So go all out. What is your resourcefulness and what would you do with it? When I tapped into these questions, I said, I would be a philosopher, and I would be a bard, and I would be oral tradition, standing on a stage, performing for people and entertaining them while I show them new perspectives. I would be a traveling bard and a philosopher. And then reality hit. Anna, you live in the 23rd century. And I, for a while, shelved it and said, well, I guess I can't be a philosopher. Fuck that shit. Podcasting happened. So when I introduce myself now, I beam. I am a philosopher. And people are like, whoa, that's a profession. Oh, you have no idea. So what do? I am a philosopher. I am a bard. I embrace oral tradition on a stage, and I tell people how to be authentic, how to show up as I am. That's it, as you are. Say those words, as I am. Can you show up at work as you are? Or do you have to wear a mask? Can you go to your family reunions as you are? Or do you have to wear a mask? Do you have to go to a wedding as you are? Or do you have to put on the right clothes and the right behavior and there is no right and wrong. Propriety does not exist. That's another part of the matrix that they use to hold you in their expectations. Good God, it's like Shrek. And you've got Lord Farquaad running everybody. And we're all under the rule of Lord Farquaad. And no one's questioning it. We're all sitting there watching the whole little thing in the beginning. Welcome to Dulark. It's a perfect town. And we're all forced to be perfect and identical and clean and crisp. And it's killing us because us is the identity. And the identity is not meant to be identical. Who ever thought identical has no business containing the word identity inside of it? Now I'm mad at etymology for that evolution. That never should have happened. The words are absolute polar opposites. When you decide your resourcefulness, when you figure out what it is you want to do more than anything in the world, now, don't think about, how can I market this? Don't do that. That's fourth perspective garbage. You don't do that. Not yet. You never think those words. How do I market this? How, every time you ask the word how, that belongs to the universe. This is my favorite thing in the world. This is it right here. When you fall onto the question, how, every time you hear the word how come out of your mouth, the first thing that you need to say is, oh, that belongs to the universe. That belongs to manifestation. You never use the word how. That's not yours. Your goal is to figure out what you want to do. So you have your resourcefulness. You have what it is you want to do. After you figure out what it is you want to do, how you, and I'm trying to figure out how I did it. I'm trying to reverse engineer it. I created what I wanted to do. And I said I wanted to do public speaking talks. And I wanted to do these types of podcasts. And I wanted to just put my ideas out there. And then I did them. I just did them. That's it. I never stopped to think how. I just did it. I thought, I want to be a podcaster. I didn't stop to think how. I just did it. I said, what tools do I have at my, that's it. I looked back at my resources. What tools do I have? So I did an inventory and I counted what resources I had available to me. And I knew I had theater available to me because I have like 15 years of theater. I know that I had the history of theater, and I know I have the history of story. I mastered the art of storytelling. I know how to write, how to communicate. I've counted all of my resources. Now, here's the beautiful thing. This is gorgeous. When you are a child and you relish in all the things you love, and you spend your teenage years doing all the things you love, hopefully, where you went out with friends or everything you did, you were actually honing yourself for your resourcefulness. You were actually building yourself up so that you had everything you needed to pull this off. It's already inside of you. From the time I was 8 years old, monologued in front of the mirror, just like I monologue here on a stage with you. And I did this since I was 8 years old. Literally for almost 32 years, all I did was monologue, practicing public speaking without realizing I was doing it. I was just doing what I love doing. Now here I am at 43 going, you know what I want to do? I want to podcast and I want to be a philosopher. And my first thought when I did this was, well, I can't do that. And then I started counting my resources. Well, what do you need to be a podcaster? What do you need to be a public speaker? Theater helps. Oh, well, I have theater. And I was surprised when I realized this. What am I doing? I have theater. Well, I need to know how to tell a story. I'm a published author. I am an award-nominated author. I know my fucking shit when it comes to storytelling. I am a fantasy author, not just a novelist. I am a fantasy author. I tell story. And I'm going, what the hell is wrong with me? I have everything I need. I know how to tell story. I know how to speak. I studied Shakespeare for 30 years. I studied the art of delivering Shakespeare. I read Edgar Allan Poe for fun and deliver it. I know this shit. The difference is self-doubt. The difference is the system literally put me in a position where I couldn't see it. That's the difference. Which is why when you focus on how, you're thinking like one of them. And that's going to stump you. Don't think about how. Think about what you want to do, what resources you have at your disposal. Go like it's Lemony Snicket and you're Violet and you're in the middle of that abusive situation. Okay, this is the plan. This is what I have to do. What do I have at my disposal? Let's inventory. Inventory you. Go back to when you were 5. What thing have you been doing your whole life? Our hobbies are not our hobbies. They are our dream jobs. They are the dreams we decide we want to do and live vicariously. There is a line in My Fair Lady that I absolutely adore with Professor Higgins. It's when Colonel Pickering introduces himself and he says, oh, so you're a professor of language. He goes, language? A linguist? Language is my hobby, my passion, my career, my job, and my interests. It is my everything. And that is true. That is it. Your job should be your passion, your hobby, your interest, your everything. Brand building is identity defining. Your motto, be brave, be bold, be blunt. Oh, that's mine. It's the saying that you take every day and you use as the mantra to revive you. What mantra have you used your whole life that defined you, that kept you going? That's your business motto. Mine, I had several of them. My first one was, to thine own self be true. I stole that from Shakespeare. So I can't use it. But I did write, be brave, be bold, be blunt. Be brave, be bold, be blunt. I lived by those lines. Every time anyone asked me, I don't know how to say this to you. Be brave, be bold, and be blunt. We will clean up the mess later. I was never afraid of cleaning up any mess that words created. Be that way. It gets you very far in life. Be brave, be bold, be blunt. We will clean up the word mess later. But say it, no matter what. Once you have your brand, once you have your motto, your message, once you have your what you're going to do, once you have your what do you have available to you to get it done, make it sloppy, but do it. Do it gross, but do it. Clean it up later, but do it. That's really the sharp focus on all of this. Start building it. Start it as a hobby. Because once your hobby catches on, because you're authentic and you're real and you're passionate about it, it will catch fire. It always does. Because there are people like you who love and value what you have. That's the other thing they don't want you to know. Oh, they don't want you to know that. Authentic living is absolutely what brings us back to who we are every time. So don't just heal. Don't just focus on what mental work you have to do. Stop just focusing on the healing. Take a break from the education. Take a break from the healing and do the things you love to do that define you. When you find a piece of you back, add it to your daily curriculum. If you love reading books and you haven't read one in a while, make it a priority. You have to do that for you. Because when you're done reading 30 minutes a day, you put that down and you just go, oh, that's why I love reading. Because it's who I am. Because I love who I am. Multitask if you have too many. I love to knit while I listen to audiobooks. I love to knit while I listen to audiobooks. So I am indulging in getting two of my hobbies at the same time. I love to go to the spa while I read a book. Multitask. Multitask your hobbies. Don't multitask the important shit. Multitask your hobbies. Turn your hobbies into an indulgent self-care cocoon. Literally. Because your cocoon is supposed to ground you in your identity and recharge your identity. That is what your hobbies are for. People dismiss hobbies because the society tells us we should dismiss hobbies. And they go, oh, it's just a hobby. Don't ever say it's just a hobby. A hobby should be your career. A hobby is everything. There's a reason why you're doing it. There's a reason why you choose it. Do what makes you you. Because what makes you you is what makes you happy. If you love shit like this, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want more shit like this and you want to get involved in my self-care regimen where you get a daily reminder if you're in your inbox with the meditations that I do Monday through Friday, go ahead and subscribe to my amphitheater below. And if you cannot get enough shit like this, if you want to go ahead and get started, go down to the link below and hit Design Your Journey. That is, get started at the Healing Garden. Figure out if your current self-care regimen is actually full rounded and hits all 10 points of your mental wealth system. In most cases, people are only addressing two of the 10 points, which means in most cases, a self-care regimen is incomplete. A healing journey plan is incomplete. And if that is the case, you are only healing a fraction of you. You need to be healing all of you. Take a look at my Design Your Plan below. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.